This is what writers can learn from the book, which turned into a very popular Netflix show, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. If you missed part 1, where we covered Act 1 and 2 of the book, because we are going chapter by chapter in extreme detail here, I will link it below. I actually reposted it because I posted part 1 a while ago. So part 1 is available for you to check there. Now, we are looking at part 2. So just to give us a little bit of context here, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is about a girl who decides to solve a years-old case in her town. She wants to prove that Sal, the person who everybody thought killed this girl, was innocent. She has a hunch about it, and she does it as like a special senior project. Throughout the book, there are sections of narrative as well as sections of what I call investigative notes, a kind of epistolary element. And this is really, really cool and illustrates a trend in general in works of fiction, not a recent one, not like romantasy, but over the past little while of us going from fiction that's driven by what's going to happen next to fiction that's driven by the audience trying to figure out the mystery. And this is a great example of how it's really the audience trying to figure out the mystery that pulls you on through the story. So we are going to jump in to the midpoint here in just one second. I want to kind of highlight what we've been seeing so far through the book. So at the midpoint, we know that Sal, who has passed away, but Pip is working with his brother Ravi on this investigation. We have proof that he is now innocent. We also have Pip entering a romantic relationship with the brother Ravi, and we have Pip's best friend's sister being kind of implicated in this scenario, and so Pip can't take certain actions in order to protect the sister. What we're talking about overall throughout this whole book is how we're saying the quiet part out loud. So our author here, Holly Jackson, is being very explicit about what the character wants and where we are in the story, and continuously reminds us what is going on. She continuously raises the stakes. We're about to see that in chapter 29, how the stakes are risen again. Stakes were raised, of course, by us knowing for sure that Sal is innocent, because now it's about proof. It's about justice, and not just a potential for justice, but we really know there's been an injustice. We also know that she's doing a lot of appealing to universal values. So here we are, with the wrongfully accused. We're starting at the negation of the negation, injustice disguised as justice. And she's also using the scene's last lines to keep readers reading. It's a master of a bounce out. And we're going to see that right now. Let's go over to our Canva presentation to go through the last chapters of this book. Okay, let's get on into this. We are now in Act 2B, chapter 29. So, by the way, also, if you want a referenceable version of this, it is available on my Substack, which will be linked below, so you can read that as well. And it has all the information I'm going to be going through here, and it elaborates kind of on what you see on the screen there. So, in chapter 29, Pip goes home and finds a threatening note on her bed. Remember, she just learned that Sal is innocent, or was innocent in the murder. And the narrative line, the last line of the chapter is, "Josh would be safe if she was here to watch him." This is clearly an escalation of stakes. The killer or blackmailer has broken into Pip's house. And that line in particular raises the stakes because it's not just Pip who's in danger now. She's worried about her younger brother. It's her family's, her little brother's lives on the line as well. Of course, that's why this often happens in mystery novels, where the investigator starts getting threatening messages. It's a little bit of a cliche almost, but it works because we want the readers to be concerned for physical safety. Let's go over to chapter 30. In chapter 30, Pip goes to school and she sees another warning note. And now this is an interesting, I think maybe a red herring or a clue about the guilty parties here. And while she's there, she sees Nat Da Silva, who she had as a suspect for a while. The narrative last line is, "No," she said, "we're all fine. Everything's fine." Obviously, this is a little bit of a lie. And then in the investigative section, remember the epistolary, the last line is, I don't know if she'll answer them, and this might be a shot in the dark, but I have to try. Here we're establishing a new goal. Pip is very determined to get to the bottom of this. Audiences love a protagonist who tries to do the right thing, even with very little hope of succeeding, and that's where we're at in this chapter. In chapter 31, Pip visits Becca at work and asks about Max and Daniel De Silva. Again, she is, this is an investigative line that we're following here. The narrative last line is, I'm not so sure Sal did it, and I think I'm close to proving it. That's what she's saying to the other person, because of course she does know that he didn't do it. And the investigative line is, time to go speak to him in person. Very important thing to note here is that chapter 31 is the last chapter with any epistolary element. So this is the last investigative section. That makes sense because at this point, we've basically hit what John Truby would call the obsessive drive, the point where the story goes into hyper gear. And any more of these investigative reports, which are, fact-finding, etc., that would slow the pace of the narrative. From here on, it's a massive race to the finish. It's also an indication that we have most of our evidence, the clue gathering is done, and it's time to solve the murder. In chapter 32, Pip questions Daniel, who's a suspect. Our last narrative line here is, let's go. This is one last look at a red herring before the plot doubles down on the race to find the real killer. So Daniel De Silva is a red herring. Going over to chapter 33, Pip takes her dog, Barney, for a walk, and he disappears. The last line is, she's screaming for the dog, crashing along the path, the leash swinging empty in her hand. We are about 67% of the way through right now, way through the book, and the all is lost moment is coming in hot, right on schedule. We see also that the stakes, the jeopardy, now it's not just her family that's in jeopardy, it's also the dog. Going to chapter 34, in this chapter, the family is looking for Barney. The narrative, the last line of the narrative is, I think it was an email or a note. It was unknown. You want to see your dog again. I think you would call this the it gets personal or even more personal beat, a convention in crime stories. Now, of course, she's had the threats, but now the criminal has acted again, which makes even more high stakes even more scary. In chapter 5, Unknown demands she destroy all of her evidence if she wants to see her dog. Pip does do that, but then her dad tells her Barney has drowned. And usually you save the animals in a book. This killed me that we got rid of the animal. It was so sad, but they did do that, and we're really seeing, anybody can drop at this point. The author was not afraid to go there. The characters are in real danger. So at this point, we have had another shift in value. So remember, mystery stories turn on that justice-injustice value chain. Here we're saying it's not fair, which is kind of a clear appeal to that global justice value. We're really just piling on the injustices here. We know that an innocent man is believed to have committed a terrible murder. Now the dog is dead. And at this point, the readers know that the antagonist is the literal worst. Not only are they not true to their word, Pip did destroy all her evidence, they just killed a dog. And I can't believe they killed the dog, which is so sad. And they probably killed two people, both the murder victim and Sal, without facing any consequences at all. And that is... basically, we're here and we're at the all is lost moment. This is bringing us into our all is lost. Actually, this is probably the all is lost, and then we're kind of in 36. We're really in that sort of dark night of the soul, the mourning part of all is lost. So let's go on over there to 36. This is when Pip quits the project. So she texts Ravi and says, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not investigating. And the last line is Ravi hated her, but he would be safe now. We're 73% of the way through. We've had our all is lost. Dog is dead. Evidence is destroyed. There's no hope for redeeming Sal. The relationship with Ravi is lost as well. And here she is, kind of like licking her wounds, etc. Note, though, that this is also endearing us more to Pip. She's being noble again. She's sacrificing for the safety of another. I think in a story like this, we would think less of her if she didn't try to stop and try to protect her friends and family's safety. So that's a little bit of a line we have to kind of walk when we're threatening the protagonist's investigation, especially with something like this, where, the person who is purported to have done it is dead, and it's not her who's, being charged with it or whatever. So there's a question of why is she continuing to risk her personal safety? So this beat does make sense. In chapter 37, Ravi comes to Pip and he's pieced together what happened with the dog. And he says, I forgive you, but can we please keep investigating? Don't try to save me, etc. She retrieves her research and they make a murder board. Here we're at our break into 3, which is very exciting. The narrative line here next to be saying someone has an evil twin. That's our last line. That last line is foreshadowing the fact that Mr. Ward, who is the actual killer, thinks he has Andy, the victim, up in the attic of his house, but it's just someone who looks like her. So that's a little bit of foreshadowing to get us thinking about doppelgangers and twins, etc. And so that is Act 2B done. So we have our own little murder board look in here. Let's go down to Act 3, which starts with Chapter 38. In Chapter 38, Pip discovers that Naomi's old SIM card has a number that almost exactly matches one that Andy wrote in her planner. This is a clue, and an important clue. The last line is, at the start of the semester, Pip had set up Kara's laptop to record everything that came in through the ward's printer. If Naomi was involved in this, Pip now had a sure way to find out. So in this chapter, we've basically poised Chekhov's gun. This is the clue that's going to lead her to the murderer. Notice the last narrative line is stating her new goal. Continually, the bounce out here is used to be like, okay, my next step is to talk to this person. My next step is to go investigate the printer. My next step is to do X. And that's very effective because not only does it keep the reader oriented in where we are in the investigation, desire drives curiosity, and so by the character always having a goal and the goal always being clear, the reader keeps reading. It also means that at this point, all the suspicion is on Naomi, which is Pip's best friend's sister, and that means the stakes are really big for her, not only because her best friend is her best friend, but she's always looked up to Naomi, so this has become even more personal and emotional. In Chapter 39, Pip is at the wards, so Kara and Naomi's house, and Naomi explains she was using her dad's spare SIM card previously. Pip checks the printer there and sees that the last thing Mr. Ward printed was a threatening note to her. The threatening note is, "This is your final warning, Pippa, walk away." This is obviously a massive revelation. We've had a reveal of the antagonist. Note the sense of danger as well. Pippa is in the house of the person who's been sending her those threatening messages. Note the terrible gut punch stakes it is. It's her best friend's dad who's been threatening her. Craziness. All right. We really are in the thick of it now. In Chapter 40, Pip rejoins Kara and Naomi, and she realizes that it is very weird that Mr. Ward tutors 3 days a week when they are very well off. So he's a teacher. He has a full-time job. They have a beautiful house. They're well off. And she notes this inconsistency. The last narrative line is, Mr. Ward, held up the bag and waved it with a ghost-like howl. The imagery here is reminding us of Andy's and Sal's unavenged ghosts. That adjective there is very purposeful, reminding us of everyone who is not there and of our injustices. In Chapter 41, Pip tells Ravi her suspicions and her plan to leave her phone in Mr. Ward's car to see where he drives off to. At the end of this chapter, they're in public. They encounter some women, if that's this last narrative line here, who are staring at Ravi. And that is a reiteration of what Ravi's family has suffered. So we have a really interesting juxtaposition of Mr. Ward coming in. You're seeing he's really well off. He's acting weird. He clearly did something wrong. We see Kara and Naomi, his daughters, who are going to suffer in this. We see, remember, the kind of ghosts of the unavenged people. And we do see what Ravi's family has suffered in this chapter here. And that reminds us what will happen if Pip doesn't prove Mr. Ward is the killer. In chapter 42, Pip gets her phone into Mr. Ward's car, and she and Ravi track where it ends up. She is writing here, I believe this is the line of her college admissions essay. So she's tracking it, and she has to write the last line of her essay here. Maybe that's why for my senior capstone project, oopsies, I decided to solve a murder. And I think that line is, reminding us we're here to solve the murder. It's a pretty straightforward chapter. In 43, which appears to be missing from here, there it is, in chapter 43, Pip checks in with her friends, and she prepares to go to Mr. Ward's address, the one she found through her phone, alone. The last narrative line is a mechanical voice chanted up at her, starting route to 42 Gravesend Road. Again, grave, we really have that kind of like dark, murdery, ghosty feel here. This is a high-tension scene with a big cliffhanger moment. As readers, we think we're approaching the hero at the mercy of the villain scene. Pip is going to the house, and she's going to be at the murderer's mercy. She's going from safety to putting herself in danger, and it's very scary because she is by herself in this moment, and she talked to her friends about that and made a decision to go alone. In 44, Pip goes into Mr. Ward's house, and she gets his confession. The last line is, hi, she said, because a girl, a blonde girl, I think, has wandered into the kitchen, and she says, I'm Andy, but she wasn't. That's that last line there. So here we have the antagonist confessing, but there's no hero at the mercy of the villain scene. Mr. Ward is not threatening to kill her or whatever. He is resigned, regretful, remorseful, not murderous. So it's not that kind of high stakes thing that we would usually expect. But that is met by this twist reveal that Mr. Ward thinks he's been keeping Andy in his attic for years, but it's not Andy. In chapter 45, Ravi comes over, and they pass the Bells sitting stricken in their car. So Ravi comes to the house, I believe, picks her up, and they are sitting kind of, stricken in the car. That's that last line. She looked into her rearview mirror and watched as the Bells car finally rolled away across the roundabout toward the snatched promise of a daughter returned. This is a sad moment, obviously. It serves as a main clue for solving the final mystery of the book. It also helps reiterate that all is not well. Obviously, the snatched promise of the daughter returned is that the girl who's in that attic is not Andy. Again, really great twist. So this is kind of our false ending, but not really. In chapter 46, the Sings come over to thank them. Ravi says they're done. They've done the investigation. But Pip knows they still haven't found Andy's killer. So this is kind of our false ending. The narrative line is, their part was over. This has been a bit of a departure from the other last lines, which have been so story forward, but that's because this is the false ending, which is a common thriller trope. In 47, Pip goes over her evidence again. She calls Max, who is one of the friends of the murdered girl, Andy, and she gets him to admit to roofing Becca. Now, this last line here, the last person to see Andy alive, it had been Becca. It had always been Becca. Pip's reflection blinked back at her, and the decision was made. So here we have a revelation, which is that the last person to see Andy alive was Becca. And now Pip suspects that the real killer is Becca. We have a decision, so she decides she's going to go after her. She's not going to leave it alone. It was a false ending before. And we have the new goal, which is to get the confession from Becca. Our focus here is a shift from suspicion to certainty or ignorance to knowledge. And it's a big departure from the final line of the previous chapter. It was like, our part's over. And now it's like, I'm going to go confront a killer. So we have some fun contrast. In 48, Pip confronts Becca and she gets the truth. that Becca killed her. Becca nearly kills Pip then, but Pip's family and Ravi save her and they call the police. The last narrative line is red and blue, red and blue. We get a second killer confession here, which is so fun. It's really fun to have those double confessions, even if one, they thought they were the killer or the guilty party and they actually weren't. And we get a true hero at the mercy of the villain scene where Becca is our villain. And that's also very cool and unexpected because, you know, you would think that adult man versus teenage girl, and now it's like younger teenage girl versus teenage girl. Very cool and innovative way that she took this in terms of how that mystery pans out. I also think that the red and blue of the lights here could be seen as an imperfect image of justice arriving. We finally had that full shift from like injustice to partial justice to justice. And finally, we are at our 2 months later, which is our epilogue, where Pip is describing the project. I believe this is for her capstone report or something like that. It's what she learned and why it's significant. And the last line is, Pip reached down behind the lectern for Ravi's hand, sliding her fingers between his. Their entwined hands become a new living thing, her fingertips perfect against the dips of his knuckles, like they'd grown just that way to fit together. And the last line here is really the conclusion of the narrative arc. The imagery is very much, in this whole chapter, is very much around life, rebirth. It's a departure from all of the ghost, death, Gravesend Road that we've had throughout the book. And it seems to indicate that Pip and Ravi are endgame. They're going to stay and grow together. They're meant to be. So there we go. A chapter by chapter breakdown of A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I am very interested to hear what you think about all of this. Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I do want to be doing more of these, so I have a couple on deck. I wanted to be inheritance games. And then I just put a Substack article out about the favorites, but I would be happy to expand on that in a video. There's a couple I'm considering. So if you have a book that you want to see analyzed like this, throw it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.